Shaw here from Wall Street Mastermind. I'm here today with another client interview for you guys. Today I have Mike with me. I'm excited to have him on. Mike has an amazing story. He just finished with his recruiting process and honestly got an amazing outcome, even exceeded my own expectations. And so I'm really excited to have him on and just talk to you guys. Mike, and so, before we dive into everything, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be on here with us today.
Yeah, no.
But before we dive into everything, if you could just kind of give people a quick intro of who you are and like what's your background and kind of like what was your situation with recruiting so people have context, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just graduated from Bowdoin College this past May of 2020, which is a small liberal arts school up in Brunswick, Maine, which is often not considered a target school directly. It's got some people get recruited from there, but not heavily from the big banks. And I didn't have any banking experience coming out of college. I had done financial analysis internships. I had interned with a asset management firm and then with a healthcare company in the finance department. So that was just the basic experiences that I had. And I've been doing my own, trying to research, figuring out that investment banking was what I wanted to be doing, but wasn't really getting anywhere. And I guess kind of that a lot of that had to do with what I thought was because of the fact that I only had a 3.2 GPA, which something that definitely can be seen as a detriment, but it ended up being something that you could use to your advantage if you use it the right way. So that's kind of a quick background on who I am and what I started at.
Got it. Okay, so you went to Bowdoin, which is not really a target school. You had a 3.2 GPA. You graduated from senior year. That's 6 months ago at this point.
Right.
And you said that in terms of relevant experience, I guess you didn't have any like banking experience. Your closest was like an asset management internship, basically.
Yeah. The most real internship, which I did after my junior year, was financial analysis, and that was the closest kind of almost work I was doing to banking PowerPoint deck work.
Got it. Okay, so somewhat finance related, but not the most relevant type of experience you want. So it seemed like you discovered that you want to do banking pretty late in the process then. Like when did you actually realize that, hey, it must be making something I want to pursue?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been doing some networking after sophomore and junior year, just trying to figure out what exactly I want to do. Just trying to talk to different, mainly alumni from my school, figuring out what I was interested in. I had this idea that I wanted to do banking, and to some extent, I had applied to some different things, but nothing came really even close to fruition. I think I got one first round interview at all those processes. So it was basically a sea of rejection. So I ended up just taking the financial analysis internship, and then after senior year, or I guess the December of my senior year, I kind of decided that that's what I wanted to be doing. So I kind of assumed I wasn't going to be able to get a job though. So I started focusing more in on things that I could to then lateral into banking. So looking at different type of things that are just going to provide me with technical skills. But then again, pretty much everything came to a pretty screeching halt around March with the pandemic. So it's basically was starting from square one and just completely restructuring how I was doing everything again.
Got it. Okay. So essentially you actually had thought about getting into banking much earlier, maybe even back as early as sophomore year, but just nothing worked out. Like you went through the recruiting process on your own, nothing worked out. And so you took this other financial analysis internship, which wasn't really your top choice. Then senior year, you're like, hey, I want to give this another go. But then you got really unlucky and the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
2020 has been a weird year for sure. And then so that kind of just threw a wrench in everything you were doing. Like, was like recruiting basically just stopped, or like what happened after March?
Yeah, I mean, there were not many jobs being posted, and the ones that were being posted were usually jobs you didn't want. So it was pretty much looking at stuff. For me, I was looking at all the career sites from my school site to LinkedIn, everything, but there was just not a whole lot going on. So it was me, I kind of turned my focus more towards trying to talk to people and learn just as much as I could within the next couple months, because I kind of figured there wasn't any sort of job coming in that near of a future. So that was something I kind of figured I might as well just try to learn as much as I can and try to get better at technical skills and get better at modeling and things like that.
Got it. Okay. So then that was, I mean, March. So you were what, like 2 months out from graduating at that point when the pandemic happened?
Yeah, yeah, I was 2 months out.
Okay. So you must have been getting pretty stressed out in terms of like, hey, I'm kind of running out of time and I don't know when this pandemic is going
Yeah,
to end.
yeah, it was more like I guess I'm gonna be one of those people who like just there's not even a close to an idea of what they're gonna be doing after college. I always thought that I'd have something, be doing literally any job by the time I left college, but it was just not gonna be in the cards. So it was trying to figure out, all right, well that's not gonna happen. So what's the next step? How am I gonna make the most of this terrible situation?
Right, right. So then you graduated in May of 2020, and I guess you continue to recruit. Um, Nothing happened, or the pandemic obviously went on for much longer than that. In fact, it's still going on right now as of the time of this recording. But you found us, I think, by like July, so maybe like 2 months after you graduated, right? Um, what made you decide to join Wall Street Mastermind? Because like most of our clients that join Wall Street Mastermind, they join the program much earlier than when you joined, right? Like people might join freshman or sophomore or junior year, and some people even join senior year, but there's very few people that actually join after they've already graduated. Or rather, I should say, a lot of people, by the time they've graduated, if they haven't gotten into banking yet, they've already given up on the dream of getting into banking.
Right.
Clearly, you hadn't given up. So, like, what was it that made you, kind of keep going, I guess?
Yeah, I guess partially it was the fact that didn't I didn't have any sort of job, so it's not like, and there was a pandemic going on, so it's like, all right, well, there's nothing. I might as well just keep trying to find my way into banking in some way, shape, or form. Then I just was watching some YouTube video and saw your ad came up, and it was intriguing because it was like this. It seemed like a different kind of perspective as to what all these other like BS things that are just like repeatedly just throwing you videos are not really being that helpful. So then I gave you a reach out, or reached out to you, I should say, and it was really interesting to me just the fact specifically that the modules and stuff like those are there's only so much difference you can do with them and giving that information. But I think the personal aspect, which is what ended up being, I guess, the game changer for me in terms of it, was being able to have somebody that I could fire off ideas to. I could ask, is this the right thing I should be saying in an email? Should I be doing this way? How should I be preparing for this specific group of this specific interview? And just having that person or who really knew exactly what I needed to be doing with me, who has no idea what he needs to be doing. I'm just getting all my information off of looking at some random site saying, how do you prepare for this interview specifically for this group at this bank? So having somebody that actually knows the industry in and out, I think was the most significant part. And I also think the the behavioral section of it, which is the one I did the behavioral and the technical section, and the behavioral, I thought, not behavioral, sorry, networking section, excuse me, but the networking side just was the really kind of improved significantly how I went about talking to people, how I went about reaching out to, making use of that database with 1,000 or so banks. I went from spending hours trying to find 5 people in a day to reach out to firing off, just copy pasting the links to these banks that you had in this Excel sheet, to being able to reach out to 20 people with a day with pretty good amount of ease. It just like made getting your numbers up and getting that ability to communicate with people a lot better overall, I thought. And that was something that ended up changing, I guess, in the end, my outcome, just not in the fact that it necessarily helped me with getting the interviews. It helped me with just when I did get the interview or the calls, my skills and my ability to speak to people were just more honed in. So the fact that had actual confidence instead of stuttering through every one of my words, I'd just done all the practice, and talked to so many people at that point.
You had networked so much
Right.
by the time you had these interviews that it's almost like you're telling your story and your answers became second nature to you. It's just like getting those reps in, basically.
Yeah, it was basically like I had just sent out a few hundred emails at that point. People had plenty of people who don't respond, but then 1 out of 10 that does respond, 2 out of 10 that do respond, you'd get that chance to like actually speak with them and figure out how to make them, I guess, like you, how to get them to see that you're like a good guy, maybe a little bit better than somebody else. And that's just, I figured out just trying to find these little bits of information for that could, the tiniest thing that I could kind of bond with them and bring up in a conversation that I could say that we're similar in this way. We have, and that was what I found to be the best way about it. Because by the end of it, I wasn't reaching out to anybody anymore that I had connection to that were voted. Basically, it was pretty much all just cold emailing, which sucks to do. But at the end of the day, more people respond than I thought would. So that people appreciate that you reaching out and going out of your way to do it. There's some people are not going to respond, but like there's surprisingly a good amount of like answers that I got. So I just learned a lot about different types of banks, from focusing a lot on more regional boutiques to then talking to some of the middle market firms. But like honestly, it's just learning a lot about different parts of the industry.
Yep. Yep. So I mean, like, obviously you were probably already networking before you joined Wall Street Mastermind, right? And so
Right.
like, one question that people have a lot is like, I mean, in terms of networking, what are you really learning in Wall Street Mastermind that's like so different than what you would already be doing on your own? Because like, isn't networking pretty simple? Isn't it just like, you know, you just email these people, try to get them to talk to you, and then you talk to them, and then hopefully they refer you? Like, how much can there be to it?
Yeah, I mean, I found that specifically with Wall Street Mastermind, there was this idea of almost like a formula to do it. And it wasn't just like you're just typing out an email and copying and pasting it, but there was like help with how to send an email that's going to get somebody most likely to respond, trying to teaching you how to make sure like you're reaching out to a certain amount of places, you're looking at these specific people, you're not just emailing managing directors or emailing people that are actually going to give you a chance. You're getting almost like inside knowledge into like the mind of somebody that's on the other side, because figuring out what it's going to take for them to want to respond to you. And specifically, I guess again, going back using that database, it's going to help you just get the numbers up and get your calls in, get the email sent. And then kind of going off of that, there's the part of it that I thought maybe to be the most useful of these parts that surrounded these job sites, because I ended up setting up those alerts that you were talking about that were part of it, setting up different things that helped me to know that whenever a job was posted, that to like jump on it basically. And that's inevitably how I ended up getting to like where it was. I saw an alert that I had set up, and just I was one of the first people in the hour or like 2 hours after it's posted and jumped on it. And that's kind of what I did. And that's kind of also what I learned to do, specifically then reaching out to people immediately there, like, and making sure that you're sending the right follow-up emails, making sure that you're thanking people, kind of like hinting at asking for referrals and things like that. I learned what the best way to do that was, because I had no clue as to how to successfully, without coming off like a douche, basically ask somebody for a referral.
Yeah, got it. So you mentioned a lot of things there, but I think if I were to summarize it, it's like you said, there's a formula, right? Like most
Yeah,
people, when they think about networking, it's just this like vague, fuzzy thing of like, oh yeah, just, you know, I'm gonna cold email or spam a bunch of people on LinkedIn, and then hopefully they agree to talk to me. And if they agree to talk to me, I'll just, you know, ask them this predetermined list of questions that I already came up with, and then like fingers crossed, hopefully they'll refer me, and then that's how people go about it. But it's not very methodical
right,
or strategic, right? Whereas the way we teach networking is kind of like, there's actually a science to it, right? It's like,
right,
how do you optimize each step of that interaction so that, look, not everyone's going to respond to you. At the end of the day, it is a numbers game,
mm-hmm.
but all you're trying to do, you're not trying to get 100% conversion rate. You're just trying to get that to be as high as possible,
Right,
right? And then you mentioned like the database, which is like basically for people that are listening, they don't know what the database is. Like we have our own proprietary database, which has over like 1,000 different investment banks on there. And, sometimes people use that for internships, like part-time internships they just want to do during like, freshman and sophomore year, even junior year. But sometimes if you're someone like Mike, who's like, maybe you've already graduated and you're targeting some of these smaller boutique banks, having all of that in one place and knowing exactly who you should be reaching out to is just like, we've already done all the research for you. And so it's a lot easier. So you don't have to spend time figuring out like, well, what banks are actually out there, right? Including like where are they located and what's their email address and contact information and all that good stuff, right? And so part of it's like saving you time. But I think the biggest thing you talked about is like knowing how to keep tabs on the market, so that using what we taught you, so that when there is a new opportunity, you're one of the first ones to find out about it, and then you can jump on it right away before the firm gets hundreds or thousands of applications. And at that point, if you apply, your application probably never going to be seen, right? And so those are all kind of things that move the needle for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I knew for me specifically when you're talking about keeping the marketing tabs, that was very significant in the fact that I knew that if my resume gets put in a pile, like for lack of a better word, like I'm fucked, because I'm not going to get the job, because there's nothing about me in my GPA, in my previous experience, that's going to jump out to a recruiter that's just sifting through thousands of resumes. Like there's that. So that's something where I need to know how to strategically get myself in the right situation so that when something comes up, I'm ready to pounce on it, basically, because that's the only way I'm going to find myself into a position that I'm trying to get to, basically. And that's what your program, specifically the networking module, kind of teed you up to be. Like, if you're going to be successful, this is the only way that's going to happen if you're in my position.
Yep. And so let's talk a little bit more about that process specifically, because ultimately that was the one that you ended up getting the offer from, right? So as soon as you heard about, or as soon as you were notified that this opportunity was available, and by the way, just so people know, like which bank was this with?
It was with Jefferies.
Okay, so it was with Jefferies, which actually is a great bank, right? It's like very reputable, very prestigious, and actually like a lot of people will be very happy to work there. And you probably weren't even expecting to have an opportunity at a bank like Jefferies. Like you said, you were mostly focusing on the regional boutiques at that point, right? Because those were the opportunities that were left. But as soon as you saw that this opportunity was available, you jumped on it. And so what exactly did you do from that point forward? Like if you were to walk people step by step through what you had to do to get the interview, like what happened?
Yeah, so like you said, I saw the post happen probably within 2 hours. I think I got a notification on my phone that there's this new job, or I was just constantly scrolling the site, if that, I don't remember. So I was on LinkedIn all the time, basically. But I saw it and I just immediately find it. It was a quick applied, and then immediately started looking through their LinkedIn like about page, trying to find different people that I could immediately try to reach out to as quickly as possible to say, introduce myself within equity capital markets, which ended up being the group or sector. But so I found somebody that had a little bit of similarity, and another like college athlete, and then another, and I found, and that was an analyst, and I found a VP, and I just messaged them both on LinkedIn. And surprisingly, I got 2 responses, because they were given that they were off cycle, and they were like, they needed somebody basically in the near future because business had picked up and they just had a lot more work that needed to be done. So I just got, I guess some might say lucky, but I like to think I kind of put myself in the best position I could have been given in that situation, that I was on top of the job as soon as it came out. And then I just immediately started networking. And from there, both of them actually ended up responding. VP put me in touch with another analyst. So I talked to 2 analysts, and I thought just from there I did my typical preparation that I would been doing just in terms of what I'd learned. I just researched the bank a bit. You researched the 2 guys, knowing kind of exactly what they did, who they were, how I might be able to connect to them. So figuring out what that one thing is that's going to try to tie me to you, or I might be able to bond with you in a sense that you're not going to forget this call happened immediately. So then I had just those 2 conversations, and then nothing, kind of figured nothing is going to happen now. It's just like what it always is. I'm just going to apply, talk to 2 people, and then I'm going to get a rejection email and fuck it in 3 weeks. So that's what I kind of figured was going to happen. But then I got an email from somebody at the firm just like a week later just saying like, hey, do you have time to talk? And I was away that weekend because it was, I don't know, I think it was Labor Day weekend. I was in with my girlfriend, and I didn't check my email on that Thursday, and I looked on Monday, and there's an email from 4 days ago from somebody at Jefferies saying, hey, can you talk? And I was like, oh, well, I guess I just missed this job, I guess. But so I responded apologizing, and then about like a couple hours later, another person at the firm reached out to me, so from in the same area, asking to do a call in like 4 hours. So then I ended up interviewing. That was like it turned out to be an interview. So I prepared for 2 hours, and then interviewed with 2 guys, an analyst and an associate, and then was pretty nervous about that one because I had to basically go get a shirt and tie on and just study for 2 hours. And then I think I didn't even need to end up having the shirt and tie on because their cameras weren't on and mine was the only one on. So that was like it was kind of embarrassing. I thought they asked questions that I wasn't fully prepared for. I just done the best I could. And then from there, figured that nothing was going to happen. Then was a week later, I then heard another person ask me just to interview, to talk to them. And then, so I had another 2-person interview with a VP and an associate. And then later that night, another guy emailed me saying, hey, which was the original VP that I had reached out to, said, I've heard you've had some good calls. Like, you want to hop on a call in like an hour? And I was like, yeah. So of course. So then from there, that point, I'd done 3 interviews, and then I ended up doing 2 more in the next week or so. And then I didn't know where I stood in the process, which was kind of just given that it was off cycle, it was a lot less regimented. So it was basically just people emailing me saying, hey, can you hop on a call? And then, but then come like, a week or later than that, there's somebody says that you're going to ask if you're going to, like, what's your availability? You're going to be talking to like the higher up people. So I figured now it's kind of, maybe this is a super day, but they didn't say it was a super day. And it wasn't also, the interviews weren't like back to back to back or with a bunch of people, but it was just, so I had 3 in my last rounds of interviewing in 2 days. I had 3 interviews that were 20 minutes apiece with the 2 managing directors and another managing director that was the head of U.S. equity capital markets at Jefferies, and basically just kind of knew what I was going to be trying to talk to them about. And one of them ended up being somebody who was in a pretty similar situation to me in terms of he played college sport and had like similar struggles at the beginning with academics. And so I found that as something I could just kind of quickly find myself in like relation to. And then the other 2, it was just pretty similar. It was nothing, you couldn't get grilled too hard because there was 20 minutes. So it was not a ton of time, but then I just kind of had made sure, as you had said, to send out thank you emails probably within like 4 hours every time. I was making sure that they were there by the end of the day to all the people. So that's something that seems like it's such an easy thing to do, and if you don't do it, you might as well just kiss your chances goodbye. So I doing that, and then I was kind of playing the waiting game again, and it ended up just being somebody asked me to submit a pre-hire registration form, and I hadn't actually gotten an offer, so I didn't really know what that meant. Submitted that, and then just a couple of days later, I got a call on the Friday night from the VP saying, like, we're going to make you an offer, and then kind of that was the conclusion of it all, really.
Wow. Okay. So basically, it sounds like you went through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews with various people, like 1 or 2 interviewers at a time, basically.
Yeah. I think I talked to a total of 8 people in interviews. So yeah, I guess it was depending 1 or 2 at a time. Yeah.
Got it. What do you think? What do you think allows you to be so successful in those interviews? I mean, that's a lot of interviews that you have to get through just to get this job. Like, were they mostly behaviorals, technicals, or was it both?
Yeah.
And, like, how did you go
Yeah.
preparing for that?
I'm sorry, but yeah, I guess to begin, the first one I figured there could be behavioral, could be technical. I don't really know what to expect from this. So I was kind of studying. I knew ECM is dealing with a lot with the market, dealing with IPOs. So I started studying different things like that. Made sure to like find a deal, an IPO that was recent to try to be able to talk to, which ended up being good that I did that because that was exactly one of the questions that they asked was what's a market deal or something you're following in the market. They asked me to run through the steps of an IPO, which I just straight up did not know the exact steps of. So because that was something where I was like, that's like, and then one of the other guys said like, that's a really niche thing. So they didn't seem to like dock me on it, but like I kind of gave my best shot. But it was kind of then just learning as to what exactly I should be studying. I was focusing in on the technicals because I didn't know if somebody was going to ask me technical questions, even though ECM's technically is considered usually not as modeling heavy. It's used as a lot more like comparable analysis and things like that, just from what I had read. So I'd kind of been prepared, and in the end of the day, I didn't get any technical questions asked of me, which I was pretty surprised about. It was all pretty much market focused, and then figuring out what your character was. So it was me just making sure that I knew things like where the indexes are trading at today, where they've been in the last week, what a deal is that's an IPO in general, what's an IPO specifically to healthcare, which is what I was focusing in on. Then kind of making sure that I did my research on each person that was going to be interviewing me, so I wasn't going into it having no idea who this person was, knowing where they went to school, if they played a sport, if they were in a certain fraternity or whatever, like just knowing something about them so you can either ask a question or not. And then like the last, because I think it's pretty easy to ask a bad question, like why do you like investment banking? Why do you want it? Something that's actually going to make them think a little bit, which is I was focusing on asking a lot within just that, because a few people kept talking about SPACs. So I asked questions like, why do you think SPACs are becoming so much more popular? Asking, what do you see happening to the market in terms of if there are going to be so many IPOs in the near future, given that the election and the pandemic are so close? Things about that. I was kind of focusing in stuff that's easily able to research and create a question like that, but it's something that's going to make you not just sound like somebody who knows nothing about banking, but you've done your research in terms of what is going on in the market, what's they're doing for work, and so giving them something that that they can then talk about for a while, because that's kind of like what you want to end up happening, that person talking more. So that was kind of what I did in terms of preparing. I was never exactly sure what I was going to be asked in terms of, I always thought technicals were going to happen at some point, and they just didn't end up happening, which I think was something that I don't know if that often happens with equity capital markets, but it just didn't really for me. But
Yeah. But it sounds like all that means is there's even more emphasis on the behaviorals, and you really
right.
knock that part out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure you weren't the only person that they interviewed, and at the end of the day, like you said, they probably didn't pick you over the other students because you went to a better school or had better GPA or any of that stuff. It was seriously purely just based on probably how well you interviewed, and they just liked you better as a person than they liked the other candidates, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I guess stood out to me is that the third interview I'd had, which was with the VP that I originally connected with, he basically said that he could tell from the previous conversations that and hearing about how things have gone, that I'd be somebody that would go through a wall for this company to try to get the job done. So, but that was something where it was like, they kind of can tell, like, I think I tried, that's what I've been trying to portray as somebody who's like willing to like do whatever it takes and stuff. But like, it sounds like it was nice to hear that, like, I guess it was, my point was kind of getting across in that aspect. And
Yeah,
then from there it was like focusing on can't, but like I know you'll do that, but like can you actually physically do the work and like get the job done, like instead of just wanting to get it done. So then that was like kind of something more focusing on. But yeah, so that was something I thought was good to know, that like I had kind of been successfully portraying myself in the way I wanted to.
yeah. That's awesome, man. That's great. Um, so now that you're done with the process, like, how are you feeling? I mean, was this outcome kind of what you expected, better than what you expected, worse than what you expected? Like, what is your current your mindset right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better than what I expected to end up happening. I thought that from this program I was going to be getting all the tools, but I thought I was just basically too little too late, trying to, with the, basically with the grades that I had and with me already having graduated college, I thought it was just going to be me getting this information and skills that'll help me, if anything, to get a job in something that's not necessarily banking, but I just will have been too late. And it's like, so then the fact that I got a job at a place like Jefferies that wasn't banking, there wasn't like some regional boutique, but it was like that, like just maybe had like 10 people at the bank, which is what I thought I'd do. It was like a legitimate firm. It really exceeded my expectations by like a pretty great deal. So that's what I was pretty stressed to ever tell anybody that I might have got it until I basically signed the contract. So that's something where it's like, I just doesn't, it seemed like they were still going to take it away at some point.
So it's like it's too good to be true or something. Like, what's the catch, basically?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, especially like after like you told me when we talked at the beginning, like it's a decent chance that like that, or it's like you're probably looking at like regional boutiques and like places like Jeffrey and stuff. They're just physically not going to be an option, which I totally understood because they just assumed they weren't. But I guess just I kind of staying on top of it and hopping, like just getting in at the right place, being in the right place at the right time, just and being ready to jump on your one opportunity you had. Like, because that was, I hadn't had any other bites or anything. Nothing was working.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, so I guess that's what it kind of came down to, is just being ready to go, which I kind of credit a lot to the program.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, like you said, like we said earlier, or like I said at the beginning of the call, um, this outcome that you got even exceeded my expectations as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I feel like I usually have a pretty good sense of what's possible for a candidate, just because I've worked with so many students before, and I always try to give my honest assessment. Like, you can attest to this. It's not like coming in July after you graduated, I wasn't sitting here telling you like, yeah, Mike, work with us, we'll get you into Goldman Sachs or whatever. Like,
Right.
that's just ridiculous, right? Like, I was pretty much telling you like, hey, this is going to be super tough, and even if we get you into banking, you're probably most likely looking at a regional boutique, which is typically the case for someone that's already graduated from college, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, look, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, I knew this was gonna happen, but I'm glad it happened, right? But like you
Yeah.
said too, I think, um, is there a little bit of luck? There always is when it comes to recruiting, but like, do I believe that you have to create your own luck? Like, do I believe that you have to, like you said, put yourself in the right position to
Mhm.
take advantage of that opportunity when it presents itself? And then, like you said, like, even if you only have one opportunity, if you make the most out of it, like I always tell people, all you need is one offer,
Mhm.
right? Like that's
Right.
literally all you need, right? And so I feel like you did that, and credit to you, even though I'm sure there were many times along the way where you had a ton of doubt and a ton of uncertainty, where um, and I think we might have even had a conversation about this where you were considering maybe just like kind of giving up on this idea of getting to banking and then pivoting to something else that's easier, right?
Right.
But then we had to talk about it, and then you kept going, right? You
Mhm.
kept going, and look at where you ended up now. Is like, can you imagine if you had stopped maybe just like right before you had gotten this offer? A lot of times I tell people like you're 3 feet away from gold. You just don't
Mhm.
realize that, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and you would have ended up in a very, very different place. But now here you are. You're going to it from like Jefferies, and that's an amazing outcome. So I'm super happy for you, man. Um,
Yeah.
I guess if you had one last question for you, if you had one piece of advice that you would want to give to people who maybe in a similar boat as you, like maybe they are starting a bit late in the recruiting process, maybe they don't have the highest GPA, maybe they don't go to like a Harvard or Wharton or Princeton or Yale or one of
Mhm.
these schools, and maybe they don't have like the most relevant experience. Like maybe it just seems like everything's stacked against them, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's something that you wish you had known back when you first started this process that you know now that you didn't know back then? But like, what's something that would have made your life a lot easier, would have made this process a lot easier for you?
Yeah. I think the one thing when I think about it is that it's basically understanding that it's going to suck. Like the process is not fun. And I've been rejected by hundreds of banks, hundreds of different companies. People don't respond, the emails don't seem to be working, nothing seems to be going the right way. You're doing all the calls, you're doing everything right, but there's nothing working, which took a toll for periods of time where it's just like it's hurts, like every little rejection letter, like I mean it just like eats you a little bit. It's like, all right, well, like am I ever going to get even an interview? Am I going to get something that is going to put me in the right direction of where my goal is? But I guess the thing I came out of that and looking at it now is that if you do this and you really want to give it a try, you want to be in banking, you want to do it, it's like you just kind of got to trust that if you're going to do everything that's in the program, if you're going to do everything no matter what, like you can't just let yourself get too knocked down, like it, because that's what I found. Like if you just like I took like there's a few days where I'd be like, I just like screw this, I can't do this anymore, it's like I'm just not getting anywhere. But if you keep getting back on the horse and the saddle, eventually you're gonna find something that you want, something that's gonna put you in the right place, and that's like out of just like pure grit and something. Because somebody in my position, like that's what it's going to take, and what it ended up taking for me is just like putting everything you got and just repeatedly sending out the emails, doing the calls that are probably not going to get any but they're still gonna be beneficial for your practice. And it's like just keep like grinding like until you eventually you find that one opportunity in that one interview, which is what happened to me. And then just like being ready at that point to make it count, because you don't know when it's gonna happen again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. That's great advice. So, I mean, look, guys, for those of you that are still listening to this, I mean, my biggest takeaway from this entire interview, first of all, again, amazing outcome for Mike. Like, I mean, huge props to him for putting himself in the position to make that happen. But my biggest takeaway is that Mike was willing to do a lot of things that most people probably wouldn't be willing to do, right? Like July after graduating from senior year, like I said, most people in his position with a 3.2 GPA and maybe you don't have a lot of relevant experience and it's during the pandemic. Like, there's so many excuses that Mike could have made to justify why he should probably just bow out or go for something easier, but he didn't, right? And then furthermore, not only did he not just give up, he actually invested into a program like this. And in essence, he invested in himself. He bet on himself that, hey, he was going to give this everything he has, regardless of how high or how low the probability may seem. Like, even when you came in this program, my guess is you weren't like 100% confident that you were going to get this job, right? But you did it anyway. Like, a lot of times I talk to students and they're like, well, I only want to invest, I only want to do this if there's a guarantee. Like, if there's a guarantee that I'm going to get this job. And I'm like, dude, that's not how life works. Like, nothing's ever guaranteed. Like, if you're looking for a guarantee, you're just never going to find it, and you're never going to do. You're never going to accomplish anything, right? But Mike bet on himself, despite what the odds seem to be, or how low it seemed to be, and then he grinded. I mean, he was grinding already before this program, but even after he came in the program, he had to grind for another 4 months straight, eat a ton of rejections, right? Basically fall down multiple times, but the key is he always got back on the horse, like you said. And so it's that grit that he talked about, right? Maybe that's part of like you being a college athlete and stuff, and maybe you develop more of that. But like, I felt like if more people just had that type of grit that you're describing, they could surprise themselves and get an outcome that they wouldn't even have dreamed of, right? And of course, like, look, just having grit is not enough. Like, along the way, like, also there are a lot of things that you didn't know how to do, and so you had the self-awareness to like reach out and ask for help and learn the things that you need to learn, right? For example, maybe you didn't know how to network effectively, and you didn't know how to get those referrals out of these people, and you didn't know where to look for these jobs. And so, but then you got the help. You went out and acquired the knowledge that you needed. So if you have the knowledge, you have the know-how, and you have the work ethic, and you have the resilience to just like keep pushing through this process, eventually something good will happen, right? And so that's my biggest takeaway from this call, from speaking with Mike. And I think it's a really, really valuable lesson. So hopefully for those of you that are maybe in a similar situation as him, maybe you're struggling a bit, maybe you're feeling down, maybe you're feeling like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully this gives you some inspiration, right? To just keep going, to keep pushing, and also to get the help that you need if you do in fact need help. So if you do need help, that's what we're here for, right? I want to encourage you guys to reach out and schedule a call with our team. We offer these free strategy sessions where we'll hop on a call with you and just learn more about your situation, and then give you our honest assessment. Like, we're not going to sit here and BS you. It's just like what we told Mike exactly back when we first talked. It's like, we like to like under promise if anything and over deliver, right? But like, we'll tell you exactly what we think is possible for you, and then also like what you might have to do to get there, right? And then like, whether you want to do what we suggest or not, that's totally up to you. But at least it's good to hear us out, because we have a lot of experience with this stuff, right? So if that's something that you guys want to do, you can go to our website. You can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's actually wallstmastermind.com/apply. And you can pick a time on our calendar that works for you, and we'll hop on. We'll talk about your goals, talk about your challenges, figure out if there's a way to bridge that gap, and at a minimum, just give you some advice on what we think we would do if we were in your shoes. So, guys, that's pretty much it, and hopefully you guys found this helpful. Mike, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on here and just share your experience with everyone. And again, amazing outcome that you were able to accomplish. Obviously, huge props to you for, again, being able to, or being willing to do the things that most people probably wouldn't be willing to do, right? And obviously, I think that's a big reason why you're able to get results that other people probably wouldn't get if they were in your position. And so, great job. Well done. And, super happy for you. And I can't wait to see all the success that you have going forward. And, enjoy your last couple of weeks off before you start work. And then the next 2 years, as they say, banking is always a grind. And so make sure you're prepared for that. And let's stay in touch, man. Let us know if we can ever help you with anything.
Definitely sounds good. Well, thanks again, Sam. I really do appreciate everything.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure working with you.
Yeah,
All right, guys, that'll be it for today. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back with more of these in the near future for you guys. All right. Talk soon. Bye.